We continue with the jury trial, voir dire, day 1. The court. At this time, we're back on the record, and juror Diane Free is in the courtroom. Is that correct? Ms. Free. Yes. The court. Judge Willis now gives voir dire instructions to Ms. Free. The clerk. The clerk. Judge, do you want her sworn? The court. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we'll have the clerk swear you in at this time. The clerk. Will you please stand and raise your right hand? Juror sworn. The clerk. Please be seated. The court. Mr. Fallon. Voir dire examination by Attorney Fallon. Good morning, Ms. Free. Good morning. I'm Tom Fallon. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Wisconsin Department of Justice. To my left is Mr. Ken Kratz. He's also a special prosecutor. He's the district attorney in Calumet County. There will be one other prosecutor assisting us, Mr. Norm Gahn from Milwaukee. But we wanted to welcome you and say good morning. We have reviewed your questionnaire and just have a few questions about that, and some general questions as well. If you could tell us a little bit about what you do with the City of Manitowoc Library. When someone requests a book, I'm the one that goes and pulls it off the shelf. I don't work for the library, in effect. I work for the library system. The library system has five employees. That means I work also for Two Rivers, Brillion, Chilton, Kiel, New Holstein, deliver books. If you request a book in Chilton from our library, I bring it out there. Would it be fair to say that you are a book lover? I love books, yes. What kind of books do you like to read? Everything. Do you? I like biographies the most. Fiction, nonfiction, both? Both. Yeah, all right. Do you like historical novels as well? I'm not much on romance. All right. But anything else? How long have you worked with the library system? Either 15 and a half or 16 and a half years. I'm not quite sure. Okay. All right. I also noted from your questionnaire you're currently president of your union? Yes. The AFSCME local chapter? Yes. How do you like that? How do you like to be the prez? It's okay. I'm doing it because no one else will. All right. What kind of duties do you have as the local union president? I call the meeting to order. I make sure all the agenda is followed, that if we have new members, they're sworn in, mainly just following the procedure, that we get reports from each committee. How long have you held that position? I think about 4 years. Okay. Do you enjoy it? It depends on the weather. Okay. If it's cold out on that Tuesday night, no. Other than that, it's a chance to get together and talk to people. Do you involve yourself in any of the negotiations, labor negotiations? No, none at all. You're not on the bargaining team or anything like that? No. Okay. Would you say your local union is active? Is there a lot of work, a lot of volunteer time you have tied up in this? I think the local itself is active. My participation is that one night a month. I don't, hand out leaflets or go pounding on doors or... So, if you were selected as a juror in this case, that wouldn't interfere too much with your responsibilities? Oh, no. Okay. Where would you say you get most of your information from the media, your news? Mostly the radio. Like I said, I drive 3 afternoons a week, so I'm in the van. I don't subscribe to the paper. Occasionally, I'll go online and look at the paper. I only listen to the news until the obituaries are over. Then I turn to a music station. Okay, all right. As someone who's a book lover, would I be correct in surmising that You are an individual who likes to receive and process information? Yes. Okay. If you see something of interest on the news, or you hear something of interest on the radio, are you the type of person who might stop at the library, or better yet, use your computer at home to look for the story, or the story behind the story, or any other information associated with that? I'm trying to recall if I've ever done that. Occasionally, if I hear of an author I read, who has a new book, or I check up on the author's websites to see if they're coming out with a new book, like the new Harry Potter book. I know when that's going to come out. I check my author's list. My daughter would like to know the answer to that. When is it coming out? June 21st. All right, I'll mention that to her. Have you done any... Well, let me ask this question first. Have you paid much attention to any of the media accounts of this particular case, Mr. Avery's situation? I've heard of it. You would have to live in a cave not to. I don't think an undue amount, but I am aware of it. Have you done any looking behind the scenes, as it were, or followed up on anything of interest in any of the stories? No. Okay. And as I note from your report, you don't really have any opinions regarding the circumstances facing Mr. Avery, his guilt, or his innocence, or any of that? No, I believe the media has found him guilty. Okay. I believe they can make you believe whatever they want. All right, but have you been swayed by them? No. Okay. Any particular reason why you haven't been swayed? They're not going to tell me what to think. That's a good reason. All right. Speaking of the media, do you have any friends or relatives, family members who actually work for the media? No. Okay. Now, I note from the questionnaire, you don't have any prior jury experience? No. As you sit and think about the prospect of being a possible juror in this case, is there any particular philosophical belief or religious tenet that you adhere to that you think might present a problem for you being a juror? I don't believe so. All right. Do you think you would be able to follow the instructions as provided on the law by Judge Willis if he told you what the law is, and this is your job? You would be able to follow those? Yes. Have you, or anyone ever close to you, ever been in charge of writing any safety guidelines or setting up or enforcing safety standards? No. Okay. What did you do before you got into the library business? I was a homemaker. Okay. I was lucky to be a stay-at-home mom. How long have you been a resident of Manitowoc County? I was born here. You were born here. All right. In terms of your familiarity with the Sheriff's Department, being a lifelong resident, do you feel they are doing a good job in dealing with crime and dealing with the public, or a poor job? Or how would you rate their performance? I don't really know much about it. I have never had to report a crime, so I've never, had them knocking on my door for anything. Do you have any opinions as to the situation when a police officer or law enforcement officer is testifying in a court of law, whether it's likely or unlikely that they would lie under oath? I don't think they would be more likely or unlikely than anyone else. They're just people? Yeah, they're no different than you and I. All right. How about in your thinking, are they any more likely or less likely than anyone else to conspire to convict an innocent person? I don't really know. I'm not. All right. Do you have any opinion or how likely it is a law enforcement agency would plant or tamper with evidence to secure an arrest? I mean, do you think they would be that concerned about crime that they would go that far? Do you think that's likely or unlikely or not likely at all? I think they would be more likely to want to get the guilty party rather than anyone. and not convict anyone innocent? Right. Are you a puzzle person? Yes. Do you like to work puzzles? Yes. What kind of puzzles do you like to work on? Jigsaw, crossword puzzles? All right. Do you like word puzzles as well? That's a crossword puzzle. Okay, yeah. All right. Would you consider yourself more of a detail-oriented person, or are you more of a big-picture person? Detail. Okay. Why would you say that? I'm a list maker. I like to cross things off my list, one thing at a time. Okay, so I would take it you would consider yourself pretty organized? Yes, very much so. Would that be how you got into the library system? No, that's because I liked books. Okay, as I get older, I want things in a certain way, my way. Right, I think we all do. Since you work in the library system, I will ask, are you familiar with a trade publication called Auto Trader, a magazine to sell automobiles? No? Have you heard, read, or seen anything regarding the Project Innocence that is a program here in Wisconsin? I've heard of it. I believe it's students from Madison. And the reason I actually paid attention to it is one of my sons attended UW-Madison, so that's what caught my eye, or my ear about it. All right, the son who attended Madison, did he go on to law school? No. Or just on to graduate experience? Just accounting. Now, the project has as its primary goal to free those who were wrongfully convicted. Do you have any particular problem with that? Or do you think that's a good idea? Good program? Bad program? I think it's a very good program. Okay. Do you follow the media accounts of, the day-to-day activities of the criminal courts here in Manitowoc County? Do you know what people have been accused of and who's being convicted of what? No. Do you follow much of that? No. Do you have any opinion as to whether the court system here in Manitowoc, for instance, is too harsh or too lenient? I have no opinion. No opinion, okay. Would you like to serve on this jury? Actually, I would. Okay. I'm finding the whole process very interesting, very enlightening. Tell us about that. I have never had any contact with it before. I mean, I've been through a divorce. That's about my big. Right. It's different than being in a divorce. It's very precise, very organized. Okay. It's very interesting. All right. Have you ever been called for jury duty before? No. This is your first call? Yes. Is there any chance that if you were selected as a juror in this case, that 6 weeks of jury service would be, is there any hardship for you that would be associated with that? No, I mean outside of my days being tied up, but financially or health-wise, no. Attorney Fallon. That's all we have. The court. Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Mr. Strang? Attorney Strang. Thank you. Voir dire examination by Attorney Strang. I did not catch this at the beginning, but do you prefer Mrs. Free or Ms. Free? I prefer Diane. Okay, I prefer Dean, but I'm probably not allowed to do that. Doesn't matter. I've earned both of them. It doesn't matter. All right, I will be formal, to a certain extent. Your husband, is he a union guy too? Yes. Same one, AFS, CME? Yes. Same local? Yes. And I'm curious, it sounds to me, or read to me in reading your questionnaire, as if you had picked up most of the information you have about this case from the radio. Yes. What radio station do you listen to? WOMT. WOMT. Okay, it's the city. Right, it's local? Local, yeah. Is that 1240? Yes. AM, do you ever call in? No. No? No. Why not? I would feel like they People would know who it was. No, I prefer to be anonymous. While we're on anonymity, I'm curious whether in your 15 and a half or 16 and a half years, whatever it is, in the library system here, in the last 5 years or so, have you gotten pulled in at all to the issue about the federal government coming in and asking libraries to say what people are looking at on the internet or what books? Right to privacy, I know about it because it happens in the libraries. It is not my job. So I'm not the person that checks out. I'm not the person that you would talk to about what your child is reading. All I do is pull books off the shelf and deliver them to the appropriate library. I don't deal with the public at all. Okay, but as a union president, have you been pulled into a discussion about that? No. Sort of policy or a change in our world? Any opinions about it? I guess I have opinions both ways. I shouldn't be entitled to know what my children are reading. At the same time, there has to be a cutoff for that. If they are 15 and they are reading about homosexuality, they are okay. That's, there is a personal choice. There's a time for that. Okay, so back to the radio. Okay. Do you read the Herald Times Reporter? Very, very seldom. I don't subscribe to it. If I do, I usually look at the obituaries and the births. Okay. I was going to repeat an old George Burns line about looking at the obituaries, but I won't. Do you have a newspaper you would prefer, the Herald Times, if it's a matter of, hey, I have an hour to sit down with the newspaper? No, I'll read a book. So, on this case, what do you know about Brendan Dassey? I know that he's Stephen's nephew, that he confessed and recanted his confession. That's about it. How did you pick that up? I believe it's on the radio. I think so. So, if someone confesses and then recants the confession, I guess one of the 2 times he's lying, right? Yes. Do you know of any reason someone might confess falsely to something they didn't do? I can imagine he's 16 years old, or what was at the time. He's under pressure. I have never been questioned by the police, but I think at 16 he's very impressionable. He would want to please whoever he's talking to. And in your mind, whether the confession is true or the recantation is true, what, in your mind, does this have to do with Stephen Avery? Nothing, actually. It's a he said, she said type of thing. Prove it. And I'm proving it, or the he said, she said. You probably know enough civics to know that, and you actually got this from the questionnaire, that in this country, a person accused of a crime can testify on his own behalf. Yes. Gets to be treated just like any other witness. Yes. Is that acceptable to you? Is that, a good rule of law? Yes, it's his right. And he also has the flip side. He also can decline to testify and rely on, he doesn't have to prove his innocence. Why not? The prosecution has to prove his guilt. He's presumed innocent. We all are. Right. But my question is, why are you happy to live with a system, if you're happy to live with a system, where the guy with the most at stake doesn't have to say a word? That's just, I don't know. That's the way I was brought up. You are presumed innocent. He is. I am. It's my right. If you wind up on this jury, and I decide, Jerry Buting and I decide not to call Stephen Avery as a witness, is there going to be a voice in your head back when you're deliberating a verdict saying, I don't know, I needed to hear from Mr. Avery himself? I don't believe so. He also has the right not to testify. And in the end, he will do one or the other. But he does not have to prove he's innocent. He is innocent until it's proven that he's not. And that's a good big picture abstraction stuff, but you're a details person, and he's already said he didn't do it. Okay, and nothing that you've heard on the radio or seen in the paper or caught a glimpse of on TV. Has that shaken you off at all? Can you hang on to that? I believe I can. They said he was guilty years ago, and he wasn't. He testified then, you will learn. I did not know that. Attorney Fallon: Your Honor, I'm going to impose an objection to the phrasing of that question. Are we not introducing facts or the court? Your objection is sustained. Question: What do you find in Star Magazine that tickles your fancy? The crossword puzzle. That's the first thing I do. They actually have 3 little crossword puzzles in there. Any of them acrostics, or are they all straight crossword puzzles? One is a word search. One is like a celebrity, if you know the celebrity's name. One is just a regular crossword puzzle. Do you do them all? Yes. Time yourself? No, I don't even finish them all. Ever listen to NPR on the weekends? National Public Radio? No. Or Will Shortz, the Puzzle Master? No. Okay, as you are, if you are on the jury and the time, you'll be told you can't talk about the case or decide it until the very end. And when the time comes to try to reach a verdict with 11 other jurors, and you're working through, did the state prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt? Do you feel well equipped or not? How well equipped do you feel to get in and wrestle with scientific evidence? I'm not a professional, but I feel I'm not unintelligent. I'm of average. I feel equipped to do it. Do you think that scientific evidence in and of itself is entitled to more weight or less weight than any other types of evidence? I'm not quite sure what you mean by scientific evidence. Yeah, well, here's where I'm going with that. You like to make lists. You like the feeling of checking things off your list. You are oriented toward detail, and that's, if we get into DNA evidence, for example, or collecting minute pieces of things, looking for trace evidence of things, preserving evidence, that can get very detailed. And then when you hear people from the crime lab, they will talk about procedures and protocols they have. They are also essentially lists that they go down on doing things. And that's where I'm going, is whether that's likely to resonate with you more or less, how it's likely to compare to, maybe just some fellow off the street who happened to see something or is testifying to something he saw or heard. I think you have to give it all equal weight. It is a puzzle. Put the pieces together. That works. I'm just asking for your answer. And that's all I have got, unless there's something that has come out of this that has caused you to say, boy, I probably should tell the court about X, Y, or Z. No, I can't think of anything. Attorney Strang: Thanks much. The court: All right, Ms. Free, you can stand up and Linda will escort you from the courtroom. Either party have a motion with respect to Juror 3? Attorney Fallon: No. Attorney Strang: Nope. The court: Very well. The court will consider her on the list. We continue with jury trial. Voir dire, Day 1. Voir dire examination by Attorney Fallon. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Tom Fallon. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Department of Justice here in Wisconsin, and I'm assisting in the prosecution of this case. To my left is Mr. Ken Kratz, the Special Prosecutor, and he's from Calumet County. He's the District Attorney. Thanks for coming in this morning. We have a few questions to help us in selecting a jury. I'd like to explain with a little bit about your work. You work at Manitowoc Ice? Yes. And how long have you worked for them? 10 years. It'll be 11 in April. What kind of work do you do specifically for them? Inside customer service for our international market. Okay, And are you in marketing, sales, distribution? How would you characterize what you do? Customer service, customer service. Order entry and just taking care of the customers. Okay. Requests, maintaining their orders, shipping. Any employment before your time with Manitowoc Ice? I worked for Case Corporation. What did you do for them? Also customer service. Okay, I'm not from the area, so forgive me. What does Case Corporation, what do they do? Custom Injection Molding Company. Okay. I also see from your questionnaire you have an associate degree for a legal assistant. All right. Did you pursue any employment in the legal field? I was an intern at our local law firm, but it didn't last long, no. I have to ask, since I'm still in the legal field, was there anything the pursuit of law not interest you? Pretty much the pay. Okay. And no benefits. Yeah. Have you had any occasion at all to use any of the legal training that you had? No. No, okay. Now, I also note from your questionnaire there were several individuals that you indicated that you were at least familiar with on some level, and one of them is Mr. Kurt Drum. How do you know Mr. Drum? I think he was like a year older than me in high school, so we kind of knew each other just in school. All right. Not really that familiar, just he's kind of a personality in town too. Does some fundraisers, so he's known for that. Okay, so he is kind of well known? Yes. All right. And when you went to school with him, that's for familiarity, okay? How about Ms. Debbie Knox? She was the vice principal at Wilson Junior High School when my daughter was attending that school. Do you know her well? No. I forgot to ask, would you say you're friends or acquaintance or just know Mr. Drum? I know him, but I guess if I would see him on the street, we would probably say hi and maybe have a short conversation. Okay. You also indicated that you were familiar with the district attorney here in Manitowoc, Mark Rohr. How do you know Mr. Rohr? He was a neighbor about a year ago, not like a neighbor in our neighborhood. I guess the neighborhood I lived in about a year ago. And I might have known him from being in some community theater activities. Would you consider yourself close friends or close acquaintances or just someone that you know? Someone I know that I would probably say hi to and have a small conversation with. All right. A couple other questions for your questionnaire. Oh, by the way, you also know the clerk of courts, Lynn Silkman? She was an employee at the law office that I was shortly employed at. Okay. Did you develop any friendship or strong acquaintance from working with her at that time? No. In other words, just someone that you worked with very briefly at this point in the past? Right. And if we would see each other, I'd probably say hi and have a short conversation. Just basic. You also expressed an opinion that Mr. Avery, when asked if you had an opinion on his guilt or innocence, you indicated you did. And you said, he seems to be involved in the disappearance of Teresa Halbach. Why did you say that? Just because of what I heard on the news and the newspapers prior? Okay. And where do you get most of your news about this particular case that kind of led you to that opinion? Was that television, radio, newspaper, internet? I think it was mostly the radio. Mostly radio? Okay. Now, you followed that up with an answer to the question, if you were selected to serve as a juror, could you set those opinions aside and base your decision only on the evidence presented in court? And you answered yes. Are you confident in your ability to do that? Yes. Any particular reason why you have that opinion? I just think I could. I would be able to listen to both sides and give an honest answer. Okay, now on one question, you were asked, if you served on a jury, how do you think you would feel about that service? And you said you would find it very interesting. Any particular reason about that? Was that from perhaps your legal training? The legal system is very interesting, how it works. So I think it would be real interesting. Okay. And any particular reason why you find it interesting? Just that, things need to be proven. I mean, if you do something, it's not just cut and dry as to what someone might say on one side or the other. The whole thing has to be presented and then decided by a jury, I guess, so it's interesting. So you like the give and take and the arguments and the evidence, and you find that interesting? Yes. You wouldn't find that tedious or boring? No. Now, one of the other questions in your questionnaire that might be of some concern to us is you thought that it might be, perhaps, a hardship if you're selected as a juror. My employer asked me to say that it was a hardship for him. I think they would manage. So it's more a hardship for your employer than it is for you? I think they would manage. Okay, well, but I think in fairness to you, we should ask, are you concerned with that? I mean, if you were selected as a jury, that this might have an adverse impact on the job or anything? No, I don't think it would. Okay, so they were just kind of teasing you, half kidding, half serious. We would rather have you here than there. Yeah, Attorney Fallon. I will defer my last set of questions for the end. The court. Mr. Strang or Mr. Buting? Attorney Buting. I will do this, Judge. Voir dire examination by Attorney Buting. Is it Temme? Is that how you... Terri Temme, yes. Okay, my name is Jerome Buting. This is Dean Strang, and you understand that we represent Stephen Avery, right? Yes. I'm going to focus a little bit on... There's been a lot of publicity in this case, right? You're aware of that? Mm-hmm. I would like to really get down to why you think it seems he's involved in what you have learned about the case over... I understand you read the newspaper, the Herald Times, right? Mm-hmm. Do you read that regularly? I get it every day. Yeah, I get the paper. And have you followed the news articles about the Stephen Avery case? To tell you the truth, after probably over the summer and up until now, not really, no. Kind of got tired of it after a while. It was all, in the spring it seemed to be there all the time. I was busy traveling with work also, out of the country and stuff, so it was, not important to me. You had work out of the country? Mm-hmm. Where'd you go? I went to Lyon, France in July, and to Hangzhou, China in October. Oh, okay. And that's to help service customers over there? Our sister companies are transferring over to the, we're all going on the same computer system, so I was a mentor for both areas. Okay, I see. That was probably pretty interesting, I imagine, right? It was very interesting. You also listen to radio. What station would that be? Well, for news I'm talking about. I listen to public radio in the morning before I go to work. And I can't really get too many radio stations at my job. I don't know why, it's just because. So I think it's Cub Radio that I listen to. So do you listen to 1240 WMOT much? Or 1360? I can't get those stations. You don't listen to them? I can't get them, and no, I don't listen to them. Driving to work or anything like that, you stick with public radio? Mm-hmm. You heard some publicity, I assume, about Brendan Dassey? Mm-hmm, yes. Tell me what you've learned about him. That he's also somehow involved in this, in the disappearance of Teresa Halbach. Somehow he's involved in that. Do you know the details of what he supposedly said? I don't really know the details of what he said. I just know that it seems that he was in the vicinity and was there at the same time. Did you happen to hear the radio or see on TV any press conferences about Brendan Dassey? I don't recall. I mean, I don't remember paying much attention to that at all. Have you read anything about how he has subsequently recanted his confession? That is, taken it back? No, it's my understanding that he confessed and then he's been held ever since then. Okay, so you haven't heard anything about whether or not he's later withdrawn that confession? No, I don't know. Or anything about that? Okay. Did it bother you when you heard it? Initially, about Mr. Avery and, yes. Which part are you talking about? Are you talking about when Mr. Avery was first arrested and they were looking for Teresa and all of that? Or later, the Brendan Dassey part of it? Oh, the before part, when they were looking for her. So, did you see on the news when she was still missing and they were looking for her and they hadn't found her vehicle or anything like that? Yes. Did you volunteer to go help search for her? No. You have a daughter who's 21 and single, right? Yeah. I mean, does that bother you in particular? Were you thinking about how this might have happened to your own daughter and how horrible something like that would be? Actually, no, I didn't. No? Why not? Because it seems that I feel she's safe. I don't know. I guess I didn't really think about that. So it's not something that you were ever concerned could happen to your daughter? Of course I worry about her. As a mother, I worry about her, but I never imagined something, terrible happening or... Sure. Now, when you say that it seems from what you have read and heard on the radio, I guess, it seems that Mr. Avery is involved in some way. How do you think you can set that aside now? And if you were selected as a juror? I consider myself a very fair and honest person, and I think I would be able to objectively listen to both sides of information and make an honest, objective decision. Do you think that sometimes people in the media, the way it's portrayed, they may seem guilty or that it's a cut and dried case, but in reality, things might be very different? Right. And you think you could look at this case that way? I could look at it very objectively. Like, I guess I've learned not to always believe what the media says. You are familiar with the concept of the presumption of innocence, I assume? Maybe. Well, do you know that defendants are presumed innocent? Presumed innocent? And in Mr. Avery's case, can you tell us today that you presume him to be innocent, even with everything you've heard and read? Be honest. I'm going to say yes. You kind of struggled with that for a little bit. You just really wanted to be sure. Is that what you're... Yes, I wanted to be sure. Searching to make sure that you really believe that, right? The witness. Yes. Sorry. Question. Now, there's another... This is something that defense attorneys always have to struggle with, is the whole idea of whether or not to call the defendant as a witness at the trial. Some people think that, if a defendant testifies, well, why should we believe him? He's got everything at stake here, right? He's just trying to save his skin. Some people think, why didn't he take the stand? He is hiding something. How do you come down on that? Let me ask you it this way. Do you think that Mr. Avery should testify and tell his side of the story? As a juror, is that what you want to hear? I don't think it would make any difference to me if he did or did not take the stand, or it wouldn't make me feel either way that because he did take the stand, like what you said, like people think that some people who take the stand will be... Can you think of any reasons why someone would choose not to testify if they were accused of some serious crime like this? Because they have people like you, lawyers, to do the speaking for them. Okay. Or maybe they are not good with public speaking. Things of that nature. So if Mr. Avery did testify, would you be able to set aside those feelings you have had, things you've read in the newspaper or heard, and really judge him like any other witness? Yes, I think I could. You really think you could? Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate that. There are some questions about, what kind of television shows you watch. CSI and all those Law and Order kinds of things. And you said you don't watch those shows at all? No. Have you ever watched any police movies or stories? Law and Order, crime things, crime kind of things? I watch 48 Hour Mystery. That's about the only type of show that I like to watch, okay? Do you think that the police are more or less likely to lie under oath than any other witness? I would think they are less likely to lie under oath. Okay, why is that? Because they're a part of the community. I don't know. They are held up as an upstanding, citizen protecting us. So I think they would be honest in their answers. Okay. Do you think that they would be... Can you think of any circumstance where maybe officers wouldn't tell the truth under oath? No, I can't. So if a police officer were to testify, there would be no doubt in your mind that that officer would always be telling the truth? Yes, I would think that he was always telling the truth. Now, if the judge instructed you that you are to judge police officers just like any other witness, determine their credibility, weigh what they say against the other evidence, how they act, their demeanor, all of that, would you be able to do that, or do you think that you would just listen to the police officers and say, boy, if they're up there now, they have got to be telling the truth? I think I could be objective. I think I could listen to what they have to say and base what they say objectively. I'm not sure how to say that. Do you think that sometimes police officers can get personally involved in their investigations? Really care about what they're doing? Yeah. Yes, I believe that. Do you think that they can, maybe sometimes that they become convinced of someone's guilt and focus on that one person? I guess that's possible, yes. Do you think that it's possible that they could be wrong about that, though? I do, yep, yes. Do you think sometimes that if a police officer is so involved, so convinced of his case, that sometimes they might be tempted to cross the line a little bit? Yes, I guess, being a human being. We're all tempted in some way, could be, yeah. Maybe even cross the line to maybe shade their report a little bit, to make it look a little bit different, or change a few words about what someone says. Is that possible? I guess it's possible, yes, because human error can happen, But then, if they would come into court and testify about that, perhaps they wouldn't really be telling the truth then. How would you judge whether they are telling the truth or not, if you have a situation like that? Have to just listen to everything that's being said, I guess. Now, do you understand that the state has the burden of proof, right? Yes. And that Mr. Avery, like any defendant, doesn't have to prove his innocence, correct? Correct. Do you think that's a good idea? As far as having the burden of proof on the state, or... Yes. Yes. Do you think it's fair that they have this very high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Yes. And that the defense can just sit here and do nothing? Well, we better not. Answer: I would expect that the defense would do something, but that's part of our judicial, I guess, because if an innocent, that's the way we, I guess, find, innocence and guilt is through this process. Sure, but do you think that if the defense decides to put on a defense, if we decide to put on witnesses, are you going to make us prove that Mr. Avery is not innocent? Is innocent, not guilty, just because we decide to put on some witnesses and put on a case? Can you say that, Attorney Fallon? I was going to object to the phrasing of that question because I'm not sure it accurately deals with the standard that's to be expected of the juror. The court. Mr. Buting, why don't you try rephrasing it? Attorney Buting. Sure, I'll rephrase it. I guess what I'm trying to ask here is, are you going to be able to really hold the state to the burden of proof and not make Mr. Avery have to prove he's innocent of this charge, even if he decides to put on some witnesses, or we decide to put on some witnesses on his behalf? Yes, that's how I understand it would be, that the state has to prove innocence. Okay. I'm sorry, whatever. That's fine. I think I got mixed up, but do you understand what I meant by that? Question. I believe so, yeah. Okay. Do you not watch any of the shows that have any kind of, actually 48 hours sometimes, deals with forensic science, things of that nature, doesn't it? I think so. It probably does. Do you have any particular view on forensic science? Do you think it's entitled to greater weight? Is more believable than perhaps other types of evidence? Yes, it seems to be. Has been helpful recently for, things that have happened in the past for people that have been proven innocent. Okay, so DNA in particular, right? Mm-hmm. And that it can, in some instances, actually prove someone is innocent, right? Mm-hmm. Like Mr. Avery, right? Yes. You are aware of what happened to him, right? The 1985 conviction he was later exonerated from? Yes. Did you have any questions or lingering doubt about that and think, oh, maybe he just really is guilty and got off somehow? No. You are convinced he really was wrongly convicted in that case? Yes. Do you think, though, that, not talking about DNA here in particular here, but other types of science, do you think that science is just infallible and that people don't make mistakes? Or do you think that it's really a question of, are you going to look at it, what it's based on, and what kind of research is behind it, and what sort of tests are being done? I think people can make mistakes in science, and I'm not sure if I answered that correctly, or the way you, probably not well phrased, but are you going to be, there will be some scientific evidence in this case, and at times it may get sort of dry. Are you going to be interested in following that, though? Yes, of course. Looking at all of it, not just the end result, but just what went into it as well? Yes. One thing I thought was kind of interesting, you are involved in community theater, you said. Yes. What do you do with that? Do you act? Mm-hmm. I sing and act and dance. It's just a hobby. How long have you been doing that? Maybe 15 or 20 years. Okay. What's the name of the community theater? I do a Heartorama fundraiser in the spring. That's for the Heart Association. And then maybe once or twice a year I do a show out at the UW Center for a fundraiser for the theater groups, Kids for Theater. So maybe now it's once every other year. That's something you really enjoy, though? It's a hobby, yeah. People say I'm good, but I should keep my day job. All right. And Mr. Voir is involved in that, too? He used to be a long time ago. I don't recall ever being in the same show with him, but he was involved in Maskers, I believe, yeah. Attorney Buting. Okay, that's all I have here. That's all I have, Judge. The court. All right, just a second. Attorney Buting. Thank you very much. Voir dire examination by the court. Question. Ms. Temme, I have a few questions for you, just to follow up on the questions about police officers that Mr. Buting was asking you about. There may be, during the course of the trial, questions raised about the credibility of some of the police officers. I understood from your answer that you believed they should be more credible because of the nature of their job. But I also believe you indicated you understood that, as humans, they are just like others and may not tell the truth sometimes. Is that correct? Yes. Notwithstanding your belief about the fact that by the virtue of their job, they should always tell the truth, If you're selected as a juror, will you be able to assess their credibility just like any other witness? Yes. The court. All right. Thank you, counsel. Do I take it from your comments that at this point you wish to follow up with a couple questions for which confidentiality was requested? Attorney Fallon. Yes. Attorney Buting. Yes. The court. I'm going to indicate at this time the law on this subject, first of all, presumes that voir dire proceedings are open, but in specific narrow situations, they can be closed to address specific personal matters involving sensitive questions. I did have the jurors who filled out the questionnaires indicate specifically if they felt that their answers to any questions fell into that category. And in this case, there was a yes answer to that. I have reviewed this juror's questionnaire and determined that the answers she referred to and the nature of those answers do fall into the area of deeply personal matters which are to be kept out of the public domain, and that she made an affirmative request to have such matters be kept confidential. Therefore, at this time, the court is going to allow the counsel to address those matters, and those matters alone, in camera. That is, I will briefly clear the courtroom at this time of all parties except court personnel. If you wait just outside the door, we'll have the bailiff notify you as soon as that portion of the questioning has been completed and invite everybody back into the courtroom. I should also notice that I did receive an inquiry from counsel for WFRV, their counsel in New York last week, asking if any further court proceedings in this matter would be conducted outside the presence of the public. I notified that attorney and sent by email a copy of that letter to all of the other news media on the court's emailing list, that with this narrow exception that we're dealing with here, the court did not anticipate that further proceedings would be closed in any fashion. I also indicated that if that attorney or any others wish to be present to be heard before the proceedings were closed, to please let me know ahead of time so I could recognize the attorney and give the attorney a chance to be heard. So before we close these proceedings, are there any attorneys here representing any news media that wish to be heard before we briefly close these proceedings? I do not see any, so at this time then, we'll clear the courtroom for a few minutes. If you wait nearby in the hall, I will have the bailiff notify you immediately as soon as you can come back in. Proceedings closed. Following portion sealed. Open court. The court. All right, at this time the court is back open. I will have the clerk escort Miss Temme outside the courtroom. Counsel, does either party have a motion to make? Attorney Fallon. No motion from the state. The court. Mr. Buting? Attorney Buting. No motion, Judge. The court. Very well. The court will include Miss Temme in the panel. Counsel, I think to move along, I'm just going to take a half hour for lunch. I don't know if you want to take it now or after the next juror. What's your feeling? All right. Let's take a break now and let's report back at 12:35. I will also indicate that because of the rate at which we're going, I told them this afternoon to bring in 8 jurors rather than the 15 that we had discussed. But I also want to let you know we may go late this afternoon, and if we need to make some headway. All right? I'll see you in half an hour. Noon recess taken.